This is cycle 3, week 17, and we're going to be looking at Roy Lichtenstein, who is a pop artist, and he did a lot of comic book inspired paintings. And so you can see here that I have a template that you'll see in the lesson plan where it just has kind of this fun shape here that the kids can then fill in a word with and do the background. There's also one like this, more of a word bubble. Or if you have younger kids, you can do something that already has the word in it so that it's easier for them just to design the background. So either way, you want to print out these onto cardstock, whichever one you choose. And after you looked at Lichtenstein's work, then you're going to be passing out the templates, and the students will either fill in the word and then design the background, or just design the background. On mine, I'm going to write the word BAM, kind of like a comic book word. And I'm going to be doing block letters like this. And it's up to you if you want to tell your students kind of which word to fill it in with, or if you want to leave it completely open-ended for them. So I have my word inside of my shape, and I'm going to go into the background and start adding some abstract lines and shapes like that. So I'll just go in. I don't want to fill it up too much because we have to fill in all of this with dots, and that's going to be a little bit time consuming. So I'll do some lines, maybe even some shapes like this, stars, and anything else I want to do, just as long as I'm not overcrowding it with too much stuff going on. There we go. So I've designed my abstract background now with angled lines, curvy lines. You can talk about the oils again like we did in week 1, all sorts of lines and shapes to design that. Once you have that done, you want to take a marker, and I'm using a Sharpie, but of course you can just use like regular Crayola markers, and have your students outline what they've drawn. If they've done too many shapes and lines in the background, help them simplify it so they just have a few things going on. So I have these shapes to do, and then I also have the word to do. You can see how this already is starting to look like a comic strip with these really dark outlines, like in the style of Lichtenstein. This project is nice because you don't have to have paintbrushes. We're going to be using Q-tips in just a minute to fill in the color. So I think cleanup's a lot easier than with the typical painting supplies. All right, so I have it all outlined in black. And when you looked at Lichtenstein's work, hopefully your students noticed what colors he was using. He used a lot of red, blue, and yellow. And these, as you can see here with our color wheel, are all connected. That's because they're the primary colors. And from the 3 primaries, every other color can be made. Now, he used a lot of these. And in addition to using the primary colors, we can also use complementary colors. So for example, if I used yellow next to violet, they would appear much more vivid because they're complementary and they appear bright when they're next to each other. Blue and orange also do the same thing. When we use our complementary colors next to one another, they're very, very bright. Last week with Wyeth, we learned that when we mix them, they become dull and a neutral. So this is like the opposite thing. Rather than mixing them and making a brown or a gray, we're just painting them next to one another and they're even brighter. So it's like the opposite effect happening. Each student will have a paper plate with paints and Q-tips. You don't have to give the students a lot of colors. Lichtenstein just used maybe 3-4 colors per painting, so it's actually pretty simple, and we'll just take a few colors. You can even just stick to the primary colors if you wanted to do that. When we're going to be painting with our Q-tips, we want to dip it into the paint, and we want to press nice and hard on our paper. We want to give a nice solid circle, just like that. If you don't press hard enough, it won't be as clean of a shape. And when I'm painting this, I want to keep my dots lined up. This is going to be mimicking like what a newspaper would look like if it was printed in a comic strip. So it's nice and neat, and it's not organic, because this is something that's done by a machine. We're trying to mimic that effect of having it look nice and lined up as much as we can. There we go. So you would go in and have your students start thinking about their color scheme, if it's going to be a primary color scheme or some complementary colors next to each other. And then they simply take their Q-tips and begin pressing nice and hard and getting these shapes filled up with these dots. This is a really fun project. I think it's fun just to work with a different tool rather than a paintbrush. And then also, you can just easily throw all this away. There's just so little cleanup for it. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in my letters first. Press harder. And then I'll talk about what colors I'll choose in my background to think of a color scheme. With O'Keeffe, we also learned about an analogous color scheme, using colors next to each other on the color wheel. And of course, if your students wanted to do that, that would be fine too. So I used this one for red. I just set it aside and get a brand new Q-tip. I'm going to do my next color. So my next shape here is that, and I'm going to do yellow. So I just go in and do the same thing, just like that, and try and keep them nice and evenly spaced. And go ahead like that. And of course I would do the whole thing yellow. And then the opposite of yellow is violet, which I don't have. So I guess I didn't think about that too clearly. So let's go ahead and do orange somewhere. I'll do an orange star so I can show you how I would do complementary colors next to each other. So I'll do this in orange. And the opposite of orange on the color wheel is blue. So I can then take my blue and do that around my orange in the background. And that's going to make these colors appear even brighter. So you can see how we just go shape by shape, choosing our colors and using our Q-tips to fill them in with dots.